It's like people have some sort of mental disorder or programming where the initial event happens, then for the next 5 years it's huge, and then the 5th year is huge, of course, then it calms down a bit, then the 10 year is huge, and then after the 10 year you got to wait till the 20 year, and then the 25 year, you know, it's kind
you
of like...
Be right about that, yes.
It seems like that with most events, you know, people really don't care. It's amazing the support that the Kennedy assassination has had now in recent years, and it's amazing that's still strong, but that's kind of my greatest fear, that this becomes what the Kennedy assassination is, where 50 years later we're absolutely like, you know, it's just confusing fog of war, you know, it's just what's going on.
So, you know, I mean, again, with the Kennedy assassination, that cover-up has been very carefully managed over the years and is still ongoing. And it's exactly the same with 9/11. And I suppose the point I was going to make is that this information is so important, both with regard to the events themselves and their cover-up, that, you know, if you really do care to understand what's going on, you're going to need to do a lot of checking yourself. You know, what I try to do, for example, where I've basically said that people have said certain things or done certain things, I've got like evidence. I've either got documents or audios of them actually saying these, or videos of them actually saying these things, and I've deliberately archived them so that you can really say, you know, yes, you know, this person really did say this, and they said it on this date at this time, you know, and with a lot of this stuff, I've literally gone to that level because I knew that it was going to be important for people to have that verification.
To be held accountable for your actions,
yes.
You know? Yeah, I mean, making a mistake is one thing. Making a little mistake here or there, we're all human, there's nothing we can do. But if you're purposely putting out nonsense, like we'll talk about Richard Gage in a second, what he said to me on the AMA board, you really need to correct those people and say, hey, everybody, snap your fingers a bit, get their attention and say, hey, don't put up with this shit. We can't be doing this. This is too important to start doing things like that.
Yes. Yes.
So, okay, I'll get into Richard Gage now. So basically, my question on Reddit, I had a big question. I'm not going to read it all. I had about 6 parts because I knew, and I'll let everyone know that I was absolutely careful not to include anything with Dr. Wood's name in it, anything that kind of hinted, because I had seen the way Richard Gage deals with Dr. Wood's questions or question about that. There's great videos. Abraham Rodriguez, right? Is that his name?
That's right, yeah.
He had at least one. I believe he had a couple, though, where he tried to confront him or documented it. A bunch of other people. You can hear how this goes. So I was very careful not to include it. I also, what happened was there was this thread saying he's going to be starting the AMA soon, and he started answering questions within that thread. So I posted my original question, and it didn't get any reply. And then I think about within a half an hour, he opened up his own thread. Maybe it was an hour or something like that. It took him kind of long. He opened up his own thread, and I was the very first person. I even refreshed the page after to see if anybody got me. So I was there. I was 100% ready to go. He didn't answer my question until a bit into it. But anyways, so I had posted my question, and I had 6 different parts, and I took a while explaining stuff, and I took a while making sure all the links were there. And Richard basically said, hey, Sacchetta, I want to try and answer your questions from as many. I want to try and answer questions from as many different people as possible, and it seems I already caused the delay. You could find the answers to these questions by doing a little research. There's a lot of information at AE911truth.org. So right under that, I was just kind of like, excellent. So if you could address any of them, or you could just pick anyone, that'd be awesome. Actually, a couple were deleted after he said that, and one said, you do an AMA and refer us to another site. What the fuck? And then another guy said, answer his questions here directly. So I did get some support, and I thank everybody out there that didn't let him dodge the question. Anyways, he said, hey, Sacchetta, if you could pick one of your points for the discussion, that would allow me to have more time for other questioners. So I said, even though I said for him to pick whatever, so I picked my lack of sound point. I said, lack of sound, and I linked to a video on 9/11. Explosions are faster than the speed of sound and cause a loud bang. This is an example of recent controlled demolition. Mic clipping, and then in brackets, when signal gets overloaded, it distorts and causes a clipping sound, and you call it clipping, can be heard in the video linked, and that was the controlled demolition that I linked. Why can we hear conversations as WT7 is destroyed? Why is there no evident clipping on most of the WTC tower destruction videos? How can explosives be that quiet? Furthermore, how is it that the amount of explosive power needed to turn 210-story buildings and a 47-story building into dust failed to overcome all foreground noise? So I thought I made a pretty good question, and I'm just finding the answer right here. It's kind of split up. Okay, Okay, or unless you had something you want to reflect so far on that, no?
No, that's great. I mean, that's a very key point in terms of the controlled demolition argument. Very, very simple to understand as well. So that was a good one to go in with, yeah.
And I find that lack of sound is something that is not talked about whatsoever. Just sound in general with 911. I understand because it's a lot easier to doctor sound. It's a lot easier to add in sound, take it out than it is video. But this is something that's virtually untouched. And the only people that have touched it is somebody like, I think I might have heard you talk about it. You mentioned it. I think I heard Morgan Reynolds, Dr. Reynolds, and Dr. Wood, I believe, kind of touches on it. But anyways, Richard Gage finally replied to me, and he said, "Hey, Sacchetta, thank you for bearing with me. I noted that you spent a lot of time compiling your questions. I am very sorry to ask you to have to focus on just one." Then he says, "Your question breaks down into 3 separate ones, but I think your point is that explosives would have produced louder sounds than is apparent in the videos." And here's where he actually addresses it. "I must admit, you raise a good point." Well, thanks, Richard. I am not, and then this is where it's nonsense. Like, I was in disbelief after this, and other people were too on the board. I'm not sure what the sound characteristics of something like nanothermite might be, but an advanced explosive would put a higher percentage of its energy into heat and light and less into wasted sound energy. What kind of science is that? He completely. You can't. I can't even begin to explain it. Because
I mean, I think he took a long time because he had to go and ask somebody for something that might sound highly convincing.
That highly scientific explanation he provided me. That's beyond anything. And furthermore, okay, so if it was transferred into heat and light, where's the heat and light? And again, they're gonna link me to the NASA photographs where it says heat spots, and then I can see pictures where people are on top of the heat spots and are fine, you know. But anyways, I just want people to know that that's the nonsense that these people are talking about. If I asked that to Dr. Wood, she wouldn't. She would definitely, or even you for that matter, you guys would be like, yeah, this is correct. I mean, if I got something wrong, I got something wrong. But hey, you explosives. If explosives went below the speed of sound, once you cross the speed of sound, people, you're gonna hit a bang. The air is coming back in, and it's gonna slap. You're gonna hit it. You're gonna get a clip. Either way, there's no way around it. And how are you supposed to have explosives that are slower than the speed of sound, but still break up a building and still break it up into fine dust? Crazy.
Absolutely crazy, yeah. And I mean, but this is the sort of thing you get with Gage. For example, you know, you can hear this clip that I've posted in my article where he claims that Dr. Wood is ignoring evidence, you know, in her book. And the evidence that he claims she's ignoring it is subject to headings in the book where she goes through thermite, she goes through nukes, she goes through bombs. I think it's in chapter 7, I believe. Yep. So this is literally, you know, as with Fetzer earlier, it's a bald-faced lie in relation to 9/11 evidence. Richard Gage has been going around claiming for a number of years that Dr. Judy Wood's research ignores certain evidence. It does not ignore certain evidence. What it does is it explains why the conclusions that groups like AE 9/11 have drawn from that evidence are completely wrong. And you've just given a prime example of that, one of the key examples with the sound issue and the light and heat, which is interrelated with this idea of explosions, be they caused by conventional explosives or this magical nanothermite, which, you know, frankly, is does that even exist? You know, maybe it does, but...
It's crazy because if you say directed energy weapon, they'll start talking leaps and bounds about how it can't exist and it's something that you don't know, so why don't we pick something that we know? And then Gage says stuff like this new thermite that he doesn't know much about but converts a higher percentage of energy into light and heat rather than sound. It's like, wow, he's making up something that's a lot less plausible than what we were talking about. And I didn't even talk about directed energy in the thing. And yet, and lots of people, you should have heard some of the, actually one of the replies was, he quoted him and he's like, do you have examples for this nearly soundless advanced explosives that would be suitable for building demolition? And of course he didn't reply. You know, it's kind of like, it's nonsense. People, they're handing you nonsense. They don't make any sense.
I mean, exactly. And I mean, if you look at what Dr. Wood did with this Hutchison effect, which we didn't go into a lot of detail about, but basically there are, I think, about 5 different effects which John Hutchison had created, and all of them are seen in the World Trade Center evidence. So if we go back to Richard Gage, and he's claiming that this thermite or nanothermite or whatever has certain effects or lack of effects, then he has to show the evidence of that being the case. So, for example, to go back to his explanation about this characteristic that this is a more efficient type of incendiary or explosive, which he needs to have some scientific paper or some patent or something like that to actually show that what he's saying is true, rather than it just being a supposition, which is essentially what it was. And this is the difference between speculation and knowledge, essentially. And this let's take that a little bit further, because one of the and we get into things like psycholinguistics, because what they've been doing with Dr. Wood's research is describing it as a theory or a hypothesis.
Exactly. Fetzer.
And particularly Fetzer was
hypothesis. Even when he was key supporting her, like he was like, all right, this, you come on my show, whatever. It was always hypothesis, doctor. And he was a famous one for dropping the doctor and saying Judy Wood's hypothesis, Judy Wood, to drop the doctor. Right, exactly. So you get people trained into a certain way of thinking or a certain attitude. And some of it's very blatant, and some of it is actually fairly subtle. And I've seen people posted on Facebook, who have read the book or have at least acknowledged the book's cover and title and what it's about. They still describe it as a theory. This is the most plausible theory, and they're trying to be kind, but actually they've been at least partly suckered into the psychology of the cover-up. Because how do you cover something up? Well, you introduce uncertainty. How do you introduce uncertainty? Well, if you can't put out misinformation, you just characterize something as a theory. Prime example, conspiracy theory. That's the prime example of psycholinguistics, which all of people like us are subjected to when we start to examine anything.
And we bring out this evidence to other people. It's not a theory, it's evidence, but people cannot tell the difference because of the context of the subject, the subject which we're talking about. Evidence is not evidence, it's a theory in that context, It's a bit like going into a grocer's shop where, you describe everything that's a fruit as a vegetable, because you've been told that grocers only sell vegetables, they don't sell fruit. It's you're almost into that way of characterization with this, and so this is again how the cover operates. But even that people have looked at it and studied it don't realise this. They've been suckered into using this type of language and this type of characterization.
Well, it's funny because when 9/11 Truth, like Richard Gage, when they talk about it, it's not a theory, it's evidence. It's what he has as evidence. It's not a theory or anything. And yet his evidence is a paper about a study about some different types of compounds found in the dust from some collected locations. To me, I can't verify that. I can't just go, where am I supposed to go find some random dust? Even if I do, where did it come from? Why wouldn't I just start by looking at the pictures of the event right after the event and getting stuff like seismic data and taking note of stuff like sound? Why am I going to jump to thermite? And I'll just mention really quickly, nothing turns me off more than hearing about the Zionists or the Jews did it or something like that, or the we were talking the other night and I said I heard that one arguing with Morgan Reynolds. He said are Israeli art students. Wow, what you guys are starting not even in the same race. You guys are years ahead of us in a different world, like starting on a different race, it's something like, why would you start over there when you could basically go to ground zero and try and recreate what was there at the time and examine that before you just leap onto, Israeli art students rigging up the building with thermite.
Right, exactly. As Dr. Wood has said, before you establish who did it, you've got to establish what happened.
Exactly.
She said it 1,000 times, and I can only repeat it. If somebody gets shot and you can see a gunshot wound on them, and it's clearly a gunshot wound, or you can see the bullet, that's come out of them or something, then you look for somebody with a gun, providing they haven't been poisoned. Yeah. So you do an autopsy to establish how the person died. Mm-hmm. And that's essentially what Dr. Wood has done, is she's done an autopsy of the World Trade Center. You could almost say that, and then you go forward, well, okay, so we know that we're looking for somebody with this type of weapon, or we know we're looking for this somebody that's used this type of poison, and you go from there. You gather the witness testimony, you gather the accounts, and you do an investigation. You don't just immediately dump to say, oh, well, it was the Zionists that did it, or this pro-Israel lobby, the pro-Israel, which might turn out to be true if you want to characterize people in this way, but but we don't have enough evidence to say that.